Happy New Year, loyal listeners, and happy new podcast to potentially loyal new listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Vaguely Scientific. We have dedicated a huge amount of resources to ensure that I am Derek, and just for good measure, we use the remainder of our budget to verify that Jim is joining me as always. Hi, Jim.
I'm flush with cash.
Yay! And our guest this week is Justin.
I'm robbing Jim.
Hi, Justin.
Oh no! I shouldn't have left all the money in a pile outside of my bedroom.
You shouldn't just go out and announce that you are flush with cash all the time.
It's true.
Yeah.
People are going to rob you,
We've talked
Jim.
about that before.
Yeah. You know what? This is how you learn your lesson, you know?
That's true. Speaking of learning lessons, it doesn't apply, but I'm using it. This is the show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers. Who knows? We might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for the fun science fact of the day. Jim?
Yeah, this is the lesson. This is the part. There's your segue. So I found out the only temperature where Fahrenheit and Kelvin overlap is 574.25 degrees. Interestingly enough, Celsius and Fahrenheit cross over at -40.
Oh.
Huh.
I just think that's really weird because Celsius and Kelvin are the same scale. It's just that Celsius 0 is the freezing point of water and Kelvin is just the zero, is absolute zero. But they're like the same temperature scale, but they have wildly different crossover points with Fahrenheit. And I think that's cool.
That's interesting. I remember in high school having to learn to like manually convert Fahrenheit to Celsius and vice versa, and that is a thing I have never used since.
Yeah.
There's really no need to when you have Google.
Yeah, that's
Right?
true.
Yeah.
It's like I tell people, I when I teach classes and stuff, there's all these places where like, don't use a calculator, and I look at them, I'm like, ignore that. You're never
Yeah.
gonna be not with a calculator at this point. So
Right. Well, yeah, that idea like loses any sort of relevance after. Like, I understand teaching kids how arithmetic works,
right.
but from that point on, like, you should know what the calculator is doing, but you're gonna get to use it.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Once you learn math, you should be allowed to use a calculator. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You learn it so you don't have to use it.
Mm-hmm. You got to know the fundamentals before you just automate it.
All right, well, that's our fun science fact. I guess it's time once again to move on to our first question for the year. How about that? Question 1 this week comes to us from Christy. Could Jörmungandr exist? And how big would he have to be in order to swallow the Earth whole? Assuming that he's a constricting snake and not a bitey snake.
I saw that episode of DuckTales. That episode has a lot of professional wrestling jokes.
I don't get the reference. I'm just nodding and agreeing.
Scrooge has to fight Jörmungandr, and Scrooge is the heel in the wrestling match. It's very funny and very stupid. I like it a lot.
Okay. I guess I can accept that. I want to ask, first question, I'm not opposed to it, but why are we assuming that he's a constricting snake and not a bitey snake?
I don't know.
because the question doesn't make sense if he's a bitey snake.
Yeah, but like he's more logically probably a bitey snake because in his conflict with Thor, he poisons him.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but he couldn't constrict the Earth if he was a bitey snake.
Ah, well, here's my next point, is that I don't see where the idea that Jörmungandr swallows the Earth whole comes from, because that's not in the story.
Oh.
I also want to point out, it just occurred to me, sorry, this is slightly off topic, but you said he poisons Thor. Snakes are venomous. They're not poisonous.
Well, I mean, if your competition was to be more pedantic than I am being right now, you win.
You know what I had a very hard time with this question is that there is not a lot of good documentation for how wide snakes get. Like, I spent I don't know, probably like an hour trying to figure out like what's the average diameter of like a boa constrictor, and you cannot find that information anywhere. And then finally, I found a Reddit post that was like, how wide is a boa constrictor? And the answer, and then in the subject or in the body of it, it was like, I've been looking for a very long time to figure out how wide a boa constrictor gets, and I can't find any information. And all the answers down below were just like, that's because there just isn't any information about it out there. Maybe roughly 4 to 6 inches wide. And I was like, geez, thanks for all this.
That's interesting because most artistic depictions of Jörmungandr that I've seen, aside from largely the God of War design, which is fairly recent,
Mm-hmm.
Usually they're depictions of like a very thin snake that you just can't see the whole thing, which I think is kind of interesting because Jörmungandr is supposed to be long enough to wrap around all of Midgard, but he doesn't actually have to be wide.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I was trying to figure out how wide the snake was, because what I was started with was trying to figure out how big the snake would have to be to swallow the earth whole. And so I just sort of had to eyeball pictures of snakes, and I focused on boa constrictors because they're one of the most common types of constricty snakes. So what I figured out is that a boa constrictor appears to be about as big around as like my lower leg. And so I figured out that was like around 3 to 4 inches wide. And then I blew that up to the size of the earth. I also found out that a boa can eat something that's approximately 6 times as wide as its mouth. So I'm guessing that the snake, Jörmungandr, would have to be like 12 to 1400 miles across to be able to unhinge its jaw and just sort of swallow the earth whole. But this is all like based on images that I was looking at, so there's not much actual math in there.
That
no one knows how big a snake gets.
I would say boa constrictors, when I googled it just now, apparently are like in between like 10 and 12 feet long, 10 16 feet long. And I was sitting there thinking, like, if you want to constrict, but yeah, we're talking about swallowing the earth. The earth, how big is the earth from top to bottom?
About 8,000 miles.
Okay, interesting. Because it's like the circumference of the earth is 24,000 miles.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. I'm not doing any of the math. I'm just trying to think about, like eyeballing it. 6 times would mean like it'd have to sit in like the Atlantic Ocean. Like that's like where its head would like.
Yeah.
It would be. I mean, it'd be significantly bigger than the God of War depiction. That's for sure. Because
well, you never actually see all of the God of War depiction.
Oh
no, but like Jörmungandr's head in God of War is not 6 times smaller than or like like it's still not that big.
I have a fundamental problem with this way of like trying to answer the question because I'm kind of stuck at the very beginning of the question. Could Jörmungandr exist? And the answer is no, but for a specific reason.
Oh yeah, I skipped that part, didn't I?
I mean, because ultimately saying no, it just doesn't make for a good conversation, except that I tried to kind of tackle it in a different way because the story of Jörmungandr, the story of Ragnarok, takes place on a construction of the world that is flat and that the sun and moon are smaller than the earth. Because the idea of something swallowing something to signify Ragnarok actually comes from Skull and Hati, the wolf spirits that are chasing the sun and the moon, swallowing the sun and the moon and destroying the light. And the depiction of Jörmungandr isn't a constricting snake wrapped around a sphere. It is an Ouroboros wrapped around a disc. And so, well, I tried to ignore mostly that Jörmungandr battles Thor and isn't necessarily in charge of swallowing the earth whole. It's also kind of like measuring it by that is kind of saying there isn't a precedent for Jörmungandr trying to swallow the globe.
I see. That's actually, I that's a thing I did notice, is that it seems like this is all like flat Earth based, and we're not flat Earth.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's kind of, I don't know, that's what made it harder to approach the question for me, because like Jörmungandr, as we understand it through mythology and through literature, couldn't swallow the globe because there is, so.
Yeah. Although I will say that I did try to find places where you could hide Jörmungandr, and Justin had mentioned the one is like there is a chain of mountains that wraps its way around the entire world that is made up of the mid-Atlantic, or not mid-Atlantic, the mid-ocean ridges, where the plates are spreading apart. So you could hide a snake in there. They're mountains.
Yeah, true. And I believe that the idea of the serpent wrapping around the earth, it comes from like seeing mountain ridges in the distance. So like that totally makes sense.
What if we're looking at the word swallows the wrong way?
Oh.
Like Jim and I were sitting there talking specifically about the snake trying to eat the earth, but
right.
Derek, you were saying like when things like swallow the sun and the moon, like they're not really talking about something eating them. They're talking about them disappearing, right? They're talking about them like being
enveloped. Sort of.
Yeah. So what if the idea is not necessarily that the snake is eating the world, but it's enveloping the world so that you can't see it anymore?
I think that's interesting, because the idea of Jörmungandr enveloping the world, as he bites on his tail, he is holding the Earth's ocean, like he's holding Midgard's ocean together. So if you interpret it that way, it's more like that's what he's doing all the time. And then when Ragnarok happens is when he like releases his tail and lets chaos in. But so the problem then is we have to figure out how could it encompass a 3-dimensional sphere, or we have to figure out how big the flat Earth model is, and then we just need to find the circumference.
Right. Well, I mean, that would make sense because it works way better with the flat Earth theory, because snakes naturally coil themselves. So it would just be like coiling itself around the disc, like on top of the disc, basically, right? To envelop it.
Yeah. Kind of like in Return of Jafar. No, sorry, Aladdin, where Jafar turns into the snake and just sort of envelops the room where the fire is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
So it's really more of a how long is the snake, not how wide is the snake.
Well, those we can find measurements for.
Those we can find that one. There you go.
You can't find how thick a snake is, but you can find how long they are.
That's significantly easier to measure. So.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about was, and I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out where Jörmungandr might be hiding. I started this question just assuming he existed, and I was like, "Where is this snake? Where's it at?" And I was thinking like, okay, things that are like all around the world. And I thought of a couple other mountain ranges that would be kind of interesting. And they're fairly small as far as things go compared to like the mid-ocean ridge. But like maybe it's just coiled up underneath like the Himalayan mountain chain, because that's a fairly large plateau. Or there's also very old mountains that the Appalachians form part of these very old mountains, and it's actually a chain that stretches all the way across to like Scotland, in that area. This chain is much bigger than you think it is because a lot of it's been broken up by millions of years of plate tectonics. But maybe like a long global hidden mountain range that you don't think to look under.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I was trying to read if there was a like a regional place that historically they might have associated with Jörmungandr, and I haven't been able to find it, but I did find that usually it's referenced that most of his body is underneath the oceans.
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like it could be like in the oceans and then it comes up and lays across land masses, and those are mountain ranges. And is there a way to like do a straight line around Earth that you will never touch land? I guess it doesn't have to be straight.
Yeah, not a straight line, no. But yeah, there's passages everywhere basically. Like you can go around the bottom of South America. Actually, just like it's not like the whole way around the Earth, but there's an ocean that completely surrounds Antarctica that's almost pretty much a circle. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just looking at a map, and when you said there's not, I mean, it's close to the bottom, right? 60 degrees south longitude would be that line that goes. I mean, like again, like it's you're looking at a flat map and the world is a circle, but from what I can tell, 60 degrees south longitude goes directly under South America and over Antarctica, and it looks like a relatively straight line.
Okay.
Again, like I said,
that would be cool then.
Maps are always distorted, so who knows? But
yeah.
Sure. I wonder if that's the longest you could be if you were in a straight line and you had to avoid touching land masses.
Probably.
That seems like that might. But also, he doesn't have to be in a straight line.
It's true. But as you go further, like the closer you get to the Earth, the longer the span will be, right? Because the Earth is spherical. But that's where all the land is. It's near the equator, right?
Yeah.
So, like you could technically, I guess, go through like the Panama Canal if you wanted to go.
Oh, interesting.
And then like, I guess there's one like near where Portugal meets Morocco, isn't there? That you can go through, but then I guess you kind of get stuck near Africa and in the Middle East. I don't know. It would be kind of like a weird. You'd have to go through like a lot of smaller channels, which I just don't think make sense because the snake would be so big.
Right.
Man, I really wish I had like a globe in front of me because now I'm thinking. I mean, there would be a little bit of shenanigans. I think you'd have to try to dodge Antarctica. But what if you wrapped it like pole to pole? Because the Arctic Ocean is just an ocean. It's got an ice cap, but it's like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like if you wrapped it up, like maybe around the Pacific Ocean, you'd have to sort of zigzag around the Aleutian Islands, I guess. But I feel like you could make that work a little bit better and make it go like the whole way, pretty much. Although, what's on the other side of? No, I guess that wouldn't work because there's Asia there. I don't know. That's why I need a globe. Is what I need.
like there is like where Alaska and Russia are closest, right? You could technically go because like I don't know, I'm looking at Google Maps now. I'm not looking at the actual. Yeah, I mean like if you look at a regular map too, you could potentially draw a straight line down in between Russia and Alaska, and really all you would hit is Antarctica.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, because I found a 3D globe online.
Okay.
And it's not quite straight. You have to sort of like, wiggle around like the Bering Strait between Russia and Alaska.
Right.
And you have to sort of wiggle around the west coast of Africa. But it's almost straight. And you would have to dodge Antarctica. But it's a snake. It can wiggle. That's like the thing they're known for.
That is the thing they're known for.
Yep. When I think snake, I think wiggle.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I was thinking about it going through the Strait of Gibraltar, where that's not Portugal's over, and it's Spain. I was looking at it wrong. Spain and Morocco meet, right? But
Mm,
um, there's a strait there. But then once you get into what would be sort of the Mediterranean,
yeah.
you would have to go through some like smaller, because I think there are ways to get from the Mediterranean back down to the Red Sea and then back into the Indian Ocean, but it is
Mm.
a river, I think.
I think that's the Suez Canal.
Oh, maybe
And
that's what it is. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
You've mentioned a couple now that
Well,
like
here's a thought though. I mean, like this snake has been buried for thousands of years. Who's to say that the land didn't sort of cover it up, and that's what made the Sinai Peninsula basically. It might just be under there, and we wouldn't know about it. How long has plate tectonics played with this snake? Is the real question.
It's the snake plate tectonics. Is that why they exist?
Oh, another one of the places I thought maybe the snake was hiding. I know that this is not what's in the legend. I was taking a lot of a super huge amount of liberties, but I mean, technically, there is an ocean of magma underneath our feet. Maybe it's just living
ooh,
in the mantle.
Is the snake lava?
that wouldn't be beyond the scope of like a Norse mythology thing, I don't think.
Yeah, but isn't the whole thing that it's like keeping the oceans in?
I mean, that's part of it. There's that's the problem with looking strictly at the mythology is there's so many different versions because it was all oral tradition, and so
Mhm.
like you could take different sources to justify a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Jim, your
hmm
your theory kind of still meshes with the mythology because what keeps the ocean on the earth?
Gravity.
Gravity. Why do we have gravity? Because the earth is
Because
dense.
there's a tremendously massive snake generating a magnetic field
Yes.
inside of our planet.
Yes,
Yeah.
Jim. It's the way that, what is it? The egg, the moon, kill the moon. It's the way Kill the Moon should have ended. The
Yeah,
snake should have
see,
been in
this
the
is
earth.
actually it's really funny you mentioned that because another of the places I was thinking about is what if Jormungandr is just in the moon, which is circling around the Earth, and the moon manipulates the tides, the water of our oceans,
Ooh.
and in our Discord earlier, I had a thing that said "Shut up, Justin," because I knew that was going to come up
I
in
was
conversation, and
waiting.
I wanted to get on top of that in my show notes.
I was waiting for it. But
Ugh.
so that's a good like taking the spirit of the story instead of the letter of the story
Yeah.
approach to it.
Mhm.
I like that.
You know, I think I would have hated that episode substantially less if it was just Jormungandr.
Just they changed one word and they would have.
Yeah, if the thing in the moon was Jormungandr, I would have been like, okay, I'm here for this now. I'm ready to go. At least there's like a tie to some kind of mythological something. But it wasn't, and I'm angry, and Justin knows that I'm angry.
This is justifying things with incorrectly interpreting a lot of the stories. I'll point that out. But
Right.
I like the idea that the Earth's core is actually Jormungandr coiled up.
hmm
So he doesn't actually have to wrap around the Earth, but like you said, he's generating a gravitational field by being as massive as he must be, and so he's actually the core of the Earth. Like I think that's a cool idea.
What's Jormungandr made out of?
Snake.
Just actual snake? Okay.
it's, it's really hard to say, Jim,
I wasn't
because
sure if there's like a metaphysical component to this where it's like, oh, he's made out of diamond or something.
I mean he could be.
Hmm.
I would assume he's made out of like earth or some kind, because he's half giant, half Loki.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Loki's kid, right?
I don't know. He's presumably as organic as any of the Norse gods are,
Mm.
but that's subject to debate.
hmm And then the other thing that, and this ties back really well into Kill the Moon, which I regret, is that if Jormungandr is the moon, or in the moon even, and is able to control it somehow, then it could park the moon in front of the sun perpetually and make like an eclipse
Ooh.
that would just end the world. Wouldn't have to actually swallow the sun, wouldn't have to swallow anything. It just engulf the earth in darkness.
Well, there you go. Well, there is the problem with that in the text is that the moon is specifically something separate from Jörmungandr in Norse mythology.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that would make sense.
I'm just excited that I finally figured out why you put "shut up, Justin" in the chat.
I somehow assumed it was about Attack the Moon.
I'm a little bit disappointed that it came up before I was ready to get to it, because I was prepared to like introduce my idea and then be like, before you even say anything.
I mean, we got there organically, which I think is even better.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It was less shoehorned in there, which I think is why, like, Jim wouldn't have liked it if we just were forcing it, I think.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's a really good analogy for like the thought I had, regrettably. But the other thing that I think is kind of interesting about that is that, I mean, this is me just reinterpreting the specific random words from this story.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, the ocean is often seen as like, or not the ocean, space is often seen as like an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you sail across the sea of stars and that sort of thing. So I'm like, okay, you know, the moon is keeping the ocean of space something. I don't know.
I mean, Midgard doesn't have to just be Earth. It's the world of men, right? So it could be the whole universe is Midgard, and then there are other realms.
Oh, well then now we're looking at
Right?
an extra dimensional snake that's going to swallow a whole universe, and that's not good.
That feels like a Marvel tie-in. Jörmungandr is actually an extra dimensional snake.
That does, yeah.
I forget what they did with it in the Thor comics, because I never read the Thor comics.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that they did something with Jörmungandr.
Well, they have to, right? Like,
it's Thor.
It's a big part of Ragnarok, yeah.
All right, listeners, let us know what you think about everything we talked about. But we have a second question this week, and question 2 this week comes to us from David Jones. Is there life on Mars?
Don't you wonder sometimes?
So question 3 this week is...
It's never going to get old.
It's very good.
What is the furthest you can be from a bear? I'm excited.
I really like this question. Yeah.
Me too.
I did too.
I did a lot more research on this one than I'm proud of. But this was where I started. I just sent something over in the Discord. Google has
interesting.
a map that shows you every zoo in the world.
Interesting.
Oh wow! So
a lot of them.
There are bears closer than I thought.
Yes,
to places that I looked at.
You're never that far away from a bear.
I mean, unless you live in Africa, you're never really far away from a bear. Is the general, or like most of Russia? Well, no, there are bears in Russia. They just aren't bears in Africa. So
yeah.
Ooh.
There are some. I mean, some of the things I was looking at are not necessarily invalidated by the zoos. I was focusing primarily on islands in the South Pacific and the South Atlantic. Okay. I don't know if that was some of the places you were looking at as well. Well, I have to put this map in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know when is the most appropriate time to say this, so I'm just going to say it now. I approached this question very differently. Because the first 2 things I thought of were, you could either interpret this question as how far can you be from any bear? Like how far away can you be before you are near, like equidistance from all possible bears? Then I thought, how far away could you be from a specific bear? And then I thought, how far?
Fred the bear.
Then I
how
thought,
far could you be from Fred the bear?
Then I thought, do we have to leave the bears where they are, or can we move the bears? And then I thought, then you could combine the 2. And then I thought, what if we're not talking about physical distance? What if we're talking about like genetic relation? or how far can you be mentally from a bear? So that's why I stopped doing actual research, because I just brought up way too many different ways to interpret the question.
Well, before we leap off of this track altogether, because
Okay.
I love all of this, I do have an answer
Okay.
that really only applies to a very small subset of the population, and that is the Apollo astronauts. Because the furthest that a human has ever been from the Earth is 248,655 miles. That was the Apollo 13 mission. So those three gentlemen were as far from a bear as you can be on a physical level. So that was my 2 cents.
That does sound right.
But it's a very small subset of the population. We can't all go.
Well, so
to the
that's
moon.
sort of the, like, theoretically we can get that far away from. How far can we get from Earth? And that's the answer.
But then the real question is, how far away are you from Ursa Major?
Whoa, that's a bear.
That's the spicy bear.
I didn't think about that one. Yeah, that's...
We're actually several light years from that bear.
Okay. We don't need to worry about that one then. I'm curious, because Jim's reaction to my whole tangent amused me. So I'm like, Jim, I want to see what that made you think of.
Okay.
So, like, genetically, I don't have an answer for this because I don't know at all the answer. I'm sure there is one, but I would love to know, like, what percentage of our genes we share with bears. I'm going to Google it now and see if a thing comes up.
My immediate guess was going to be like trilobites, because I knew that they didn't have a current genetic descendant.
I bet it's more than you think it is.
Yeah. Well, this is from the Sierra Club, which I would argue is fairly reputable.
Okay.
The headline, this is a great headline. It is worth repeating. The headline is, Douglas Chadwick is 4/5 grizzly, and so are you. It says, it's fairly safe to assume that we and grizzly bears have somewhere between 80 and 90% of our genes in common.
Ooh.
That's a lot.
I mean... Yeah, but, like,
I mean, we're both mammals, so...
Yeah, that's not super surprising, because mammals, and we both have 2 arms, 2 legs, or rather, 4 arms and hind legs, or whatever.
Yeah.
I was almost thinking, like, this is not strictly genetic, but, like, if you look at, like, a spider, I would say they're pretty far from a bear because they have, 8 appendages, or, more than that, but... simplifying 8. So, like, I would say bones. No bones. There you go. But I would say that a slug is further away from a bear than a spider is, because it doesn't even have a comparable structure.
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised. Now, I don't know how reputable this site is. It's Alpha Biolabs USA, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm hesitant to believe this one.
Okay.
But it says that we only share approximately 69% of our DNA with rats and 67% with mice. And that seems kind of low to me. But then again, I also could sort of see it. I know that a lot of our, like, metabolic processes are relatively different just because they have a much faster metabolism and that sort of thing. But I don't know.
My understanding of DNA is really too limited, but, like, the things that you've told me about, like, the amount of chromosomes a species has, like, is interestingly enough, it seems like how genetically similar we are percentage-wise doesn't necessarily matter that much.
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, there are a lot of vegetables that share a surprisingly large amount of our DNA just because we all do the same stuff with our mitochondria, and we all do the same stuff with all of the other organelles. So there's really not anything that's, like, so far removed that the number gets weird.
Jim,
I guess that's fair.
Which vegetable is the most closely related to a human?
I don't know, but I'm going to Google it.
How far away can you be from a vegetable?
I mean, that one's a lot harder than a bear, I assume.
I think so, because then you have to go to the moon for it to make any discernible difference.
Yeah.
They eat vegetables in space.
I mean, true, but like if your goal is to get away from all vegetables.
Oh, now that's an interesting fact, and it is something that I do know, and it is true.
Okay.
It's not an answer to the question that Justin just posited, but the fact of the matter is that mushrooms are more closely related to us than plants, which I just think is
I
cool.
had heard that, yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, mushrooms eat. Like they are not photosynthetic. They are heterotrophic. That's the word I
Yeah,
was
they
looking for.
consume decaying organic stuff,
Yeah.
which makes me wonder about carnivorous plants.
Well, as far as I understand, carnivorous plants aren't eating to get like they usually do that for a lot of like the nitrogen in the body.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not eating to like get energy and that sort of thing like we do. They're happy doing photosynthesis, but they do need some of the nutrients that we or that you get from eating something else,
Okay.
dissolving it, if you will.
Sure.
Okay, not to cut you off from this, but to get back on topic.
What?
I know, right? Terrible. Does the bear have to be alive?
Oh, I would say no, but I've also been fast and loose with this entire question.
Yeah, whoever submitted this does not give us enough specifics for us to not derail ourselves.
That's what I love about it.
So rip up the rails. Let's go on a ride.
We need more of these very simple questions that just let us go wherever.
Drive this train across a field of wheat.
I'm
sorry, Justin.
This is phenomenal. So the reason I ask is, okay, so there are no bears in Africa, right? But there used to be a bear in Africa. There used to be a bear called the Atlas bear that's now extinct, who used to live in like Morocco and in parts of Africa. And so if you go to Africa, you can technically be like, I know space, we've talked about space. If we're thinking about like different places and like, I guess we can play fast and loose with what a bear is, right? Like, I know a koala bear is not a bear, but they call it a bear. Can we say the bear is not?
Well, it has bear in the name, right?
Oh no, how far can you be from a teddy bear?
Ooh.
And do teddy bears count? Because
I think you call them bears. I think they count.
That's true. Well,
I mean, I feel like they count more than koalas.
In that case, I'm about 10 feet from a bear.
I think don't go to Chicago. Yeah. You're failing this challenge if you go to Chicago.
That's very true.
I bet there's a teddy bear on the International Space Station.
I wouldn't be surprised.
There probably has been at least one in space. But yeah, like if you're trying to get as far away from a bear as possible while also being on a continent that people inhabit, I feel like Africa is the way to go. But then again, there were bears in Africa, and they're not there anymore. Yep. But if you're talking about fossilized bears, skeleton bears, spooky bears,
the remains of the bears,
yeah.
Spooky bears.
I don't think it's possible to get away from bears, guys. This is more of an issue than I thought it was.
Right. The furthest you can be from a bear is actually a very short distance, is what we're discovering.
Strikingly short. I was convinced. I was like, Africa has no bears. Africa used to have a bear. And there are zoos. There's lots of zoos in Africa. I'm sure one of them has a bear.
Yeah.
I'm sure, there have to be. There aren't native bears, but like there are bears in captivity.
Imported bears.
We have cheetahs in our zoo. They're not native to America.
Right.
So there have to be bears in Africa in zoos.
We have polar bears in our zoo, so like.
Oh, yeah.
We do, yeah.
I think one of the things that I find most interesting about this is that I didn't realize that there were bears in South America. That's where the spectacled bear is, if I recall correctly.
I love the spectacled bear.
And the range of that is sort of like along the Andes Mountains. So I was like, Africa, South America. Not South America, apparently. There are some spectacled bears there. They'll get you.
They'll get you.
They'll get you. What was that one that Allie said she could fight? Was it like the sun bear or something?
Oh, sun bears are cool. So sun bears are, I think, like, is it Vietnam? They live in like,
I think so,
like Southeast Asia. Yeah,
Mhm.
here we go. Southeast
Oh
Asia.
yeah, its genus is like
They
Malanus.
look wild.
Yeah.
They are like the oddest looking bear. Um, and there are like a bunch of yeah, because they're just like silly looking bears, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you this picture because it's phenomenal. And this is why they are silly looking bears.
Yeah.
It's got a tongue that's like too long for its
If
body.
you Google sun bear, that's the first picture that comes up. Listener, Google sun
Yes.
bear. This
It's
bear
got
is
its tongue sticking out.
he's a very silly
I'll
bear.
stick that in the show notes too, because it's got to be seen.
They're the ones that stand on their hind legs and look like people. They're the ones that like. Do you
Oh.
remember when they were like that bear is a person in a bear suit? It was a sun bear that they were
Oh
looking. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what it was. Because they
Mhm.
look like people. Like they can almost stand up straight. Like it's very odd. They're very odd bears,
Hmm.
and they're like skinny like people. They looks like a dude in a bear suit, the bear costume, when they stand up.
I was reading about sloth bears that are also kind of silly looking.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And then if you're a barbarian in Dungeons and Dragons, then like you're closer to a bear than like a fighter would be because there is a
Mm.
path in which you can have a bear spirit.
That's why they're called barbarians.
Whoa.
Hey, well done.
Hmm.
Good job,
Hmm.
Jim. You did it.
Yeah. As far as I know, there are no bears in Antarctica, so I guess maybe there. Although I feel like we should import bears. I think they'd do well there. They would eat all of the penguins, and that would solve that problem.
Yeah, if we're looking at strictly distance, I think the furthest, like, it depends how much effort we're allowed to put into it because, like, you can be the diameter of the Earth away from a specific bear, but then, like,
Mhm.
you could theoretically go to space. So,
I googled bears in Antarctica. I know there's no bears in Antarctica. I know the polar bears are not in Antarctica.
there's no polar bears there,
No,
yeah.
but there is a website that the title of the site, the question is just, should there be bears in Antarctica? And
Interesting.
I was like,
I'm listening.
and then the blurb is the short answer is no. And I wanted to be
Oh,
like,
okay.
but like, what? Like, that's not how you ask that question.
Yeah.
Should
That's
there be
not-
bears?
It's hard to say no. I don't know.
I mean, you can't just plop this is like the classic invasive species. Like you can't just put a bear there and say like, well, I guess it's going to be fine. It'll work out. I mean, I guess you could put one bear
You could
there.
I
and
was
see what
gonna say,
happens.
as
Like,
long as
but if
it's
you
not
introduce
pregnant.
a breeding population of bears to Antarctica, something bad will happen.
Yeah.
I also just stumbled upon Polar Bears International. Here, Jim, this one's for you. The question is,
Why we can't move them?
yeah, can we move polar bears to Antarctica? The simple answer is no. We can't.
Huh.
Uh,
Well,
Oh yeah, the disruption of entire ecosystems, including rabbits in Australia, the mongoose to Hawaii, the brown tree snake to Guam, foxes to the Aleutian Islands, and various invasive plants and aquatic species.
I want to argue that none of that tells me why I can't do it. It just tells me that I
Or
should.
why you shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
True.
You can't do it because it would be expensive to rent all those helicopters.
Oh yeah, I personally couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to go that close to a polar bear.
The other thing is that I mean polar bears eat what? Seals? Is that what their primary prey animal is?
Yeah, like seals and fish, right?
It is among them, sure. See,
Yeah.
yeah, they swim.
So they're not going to know that they can. I mean, maybe they'll figure it out. I don't know how smart a polar bear is, but I don't think they're going to just be like, well, there are no seals. I guess that black bird thing will do. I don't think it works that way. I'm sure they probably could figure it out with like
There,
enough motivation, like
there are
hunger.
no seals in Antarctica.
Maybe there are seals in Antarctica.
I don't know if there are.
Actually.
That's just what it just made me think of the American
see.
Tail song.
Does anything hunt the penguin? Like, does the penguin have a natural predator? That
There are Antarctic seals. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seals do. There's an old cartoon called Scamper the Penguin that I used to watch when I was a kid, and yeah, they get eaten by seals and
yeah.
big
like leopard
fish.
seals, southern elephant seals. There are lots of seals in Antarctica. The bears will be fine. Let's do it.
The penguins already have predators.
Yeah.
The bear's gonna watch the seal because he's hunting the seal. He's gonna see the seal eat the penguin, and the bear's gonna go, "Oh, okay, I can eat the penguin too."
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll just eat all of them. There will be one bear and no penguins.
Yep.
Oh, fun fact! I just found out the coat of arms of Greenland is a polar bear.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
cool.
That is a fun fact.
I'd also like to point out where it says on this website about Polar Bears International, although it sounds like an easy solution, the risk of relocation far outweighs the benefits of putting bears in Antarctica. I disagree when it comes to how close can we get people to bears. I feel like that would be a benefit
Yeah.
that outweighs the
We're
cost.
trying to get closer to bears. Yep.
We've found out
I
that
won't rest until there's a polar bear in everyone's kitchen.
we found out the hard way that we're a lot closer to bears than we thought.
We're a lot closer to you, the listener, are not that far away from a bear.
And now it's our goal here at Vaguely Scientific to get more people closer to bears.
More people closer to more bears and more rockets on more things.
We've shifted our mission statement.
We've added one more bullet point to it.
Yeah. Add it to the old pegboard. We'll get there.
Oh, man.
One of the things that makes this actually maybe a bad idea is that I hear that polar bears are like the most vicious kind of bear.
Oh, yeah.
Like
You don't want to go near a polar bear.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Yep. They'll kill you.
I mean, maybe a black bear. A black bear in every home.
Maybe. A black bear in every home. Right over the mantle. That makes me think of hunting, and I don't like trophy hunting. All right, listeners, let us know how far can a bear be from Jörmungandr? I don't know. I don't have a better one. Jim, do we have any listener mail this week?
Depends on if Jörmungandr's in the moon.
Or if he's a bear. Maybe Jörmungandr's a bear, not a snake.
Whoa.
Oh, no. We never considered that.
We never... With good cause, I think.
For good reason, Jim.
For good reason.
Yeah. Well, we do have some listener mail since you brought it up. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet at vaguelysci. And this email comes to us from Saber and is in regards to, oh, you know what? I didn't write down what episode this was, but it was the one where we talked about assigning fictional heroes to historical disasters. That was...
chucking hammers in volcanoes or something.
Yeah, episode 135, the one with Mark.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Saber writes, "Good day, hosts. I have a friend who works as a rescue dispatcher, and it consistently comes up that being able to know exactly where folks are and telling them where to go could save more lives. Telepaths would actually be incredibly useful during any natural disaster, as they could, 1, locate any survivors, 2, send any appropriate superheroes to their direct location, 3, tell folks in trouble where to move to get to safety until they could be rescued. Notable examples could be Professor Xavier, Jean Grey, Raven, and Martian Manhunter. Thanks for a great show as usual, Saber."
Thank you. That's just a good catch-all, useful power is telepathy.
Yeah. I like the idea of there being, not a person that does, the actual deed of being helpful, but a person who is in charge, which is a very useful skill to have.
Yeah, I agree.
All of those examples are good guys. But if a real person got telepathy, I don't know. I think they would just rob banks. Or Jim. They'd just rob Jim.
They'd just rob Jim. Well, he did announce that he is flush with cash.
It's really his fault.
Don't rob Jim. That's
Yeah, please no.
That's our disclaimer for the episode.
I'm sorry I victim blamed you, Jim. It was
It's, you know what? It's totally fair. So it is what it is. Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other great places the cool podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
And they need to be warned about their proximity to bears.
Yeah, exactly. Our vaguely musical intro was composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. So many cool things over there. Lots of great stuff to... I mean, I like it. I really lost my momentum there at the end.
That's totally fine. Thanks to Justin for being our guest this week.
absolutely. You know what? I'm gonna go find a bear.
That's a good idea.
Is it?
Nope. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm a bear.
I'm a
Right.
bear.
Oh no! Ah, run!
Only 12 more months until 2024 is over. Woo!
That long, huh?
Toodaloo, everyone.
That long.
Mm.
Snakes are venomous, but our friend the frog is poisonous. I only say that because
Are snakes goodly shaped?
frogs are badly shaped. Snakes are goodly shaped.
No. I think it might be the opposite. I think snakes might be... They don't have any legs.
They don't have to have legs. They don't need legs, Jim.
Where we're going, we don't need legs.
You know, it's funny. Legs make you weak. Is I'm sure something that snakes tell each other
That's true.
whenever they're together to make themselves feel strong.